Thom Hartmann here on the news. You need to know this. Republicans didn't get the message from Tuesday's election in New York's 26th district. One day after their plan to privatize Medicare was rejected by voters, all the Republicans in the Senate except for 5 voted to privatize Medicare. Paul Ryan budget was rejected in the Senate on Wednesday, but not before Republicans lined up to sign their name to it. All in all, only 9 Republicans out of the 288 in both the House and Senate had the courage to say no to ending Medicare as we know it. Now it's up to the Democrats to make these Republicans who want to throw grandma off a cliff wear their votes around their neck into next year's elections. The New Jersey State Supreme Court told Governor Chris Christie he is in violation of the state's constitution with his massive cuts to education. The state constitution requires the state, quote, to provide for the maintenance and support of a thorough and efficient system of free public schools for the instruction of all the children in the state, end quote. But thanks to Christie's budget cuts, a lot of New Jersey schools, mostly in poor districts, are not meeting that obligation. Thus, the court is forcing Christie to replenish the $500 million he cut out of education. But Christie isn't the only governor or the first governor slapped down by his state Supreme Court. 19 other high courts have told their mostly Republican governors that their education cuts are unconstitutional. Of course, when it comes to turning private education over to profit-making schools for their millionaire buddies with vouchers, Republicans tend to ignore what any constitution says and don't think twice about screwing over poor students. In the best of the rest of the news, that Texas independence streak is showing itself again. The Texas state legislature is considering a bill that allows state police to arrest TSA screeners and throw them in jail for up to 1 year for their intrusive pat-downs. The bill is radically unconstitutional as it puts restrictions on federal agents from doing their jobs, and the U.S. Department of Justice issued a warning to Texas yesterday, saying that if the law were adopted, then TSA would be required to cancel all flights or series of flights for which it could not ensure the safety of the passenger and crew. Now, there's no flights out of Texas. I agree with the outrage over the TSA gropings and the Chertoff porno X-ray scanners. And for once, but for once, can Republicans do something productive and constitutional to solve a problem? With Rick Perry in charge, the answer is obviously no. House Democrats are crusading for medical marijuana rights. Congressman Pete Stark, Jared Polis, and Barney Frank introduced a series of bills that protect marijuana entrepreneurs. Legislation classifies medical marijuana dispensaries as legitimate small businesses and thus able to take advantage of federal tax deductions just like any other small business. It also gives immunity from federal prosecution to any person or business in the medical marijuana industry as long as they are operating in compliance with state and local laws. In addition to these reforms, other measures ensure that medical marijuana dispensaries have full access to the American banking system and that marijuana is reclassified as a drug that is not highly addictive and does have medical value. It's about time for some common sense marijuana reforms in this country. Too much money has been wasted and too many lives ruined by Nixon's so-called war on drugs. Dozens of people are dead in Yemen as street battles between government supporters and anti-government activists rage on for the third straight day. Ali Abdullah Saleh, the president of Yemen, refuses to step down to quell the unrest in his country, and now the United States State Department is issuing a warning to all non-essential U.S. diplomats to get out of the country immediately. Speaking in London yesterday, President Obama again called on President Saleh to leave office, to which Saleh responded, "I don't take orders from the outside." If Ohio governor and former Fox News talking head John Kasich thought he could survive a recall election in the future, he needs to think again. Just a half year after he was elected to office and just a few months after he signed a controversial anti-union bill into law, a new poll by Public Policy Polling shows that if the election were held again today, Kasich would be blown out by 25 points. The new poll also puts Kasich's disapproval rating at a lofty 56%, tying him with Florida Governor Rick Scott as the most unpopular governor in America, according to American Public Policy Polling. Whether it's the union busting or the stripping away of the social safety nets or the war on education, it took less than 6 months for Republicans to wear out their welcome with voters. Expect these right-wingers to face consequences at the polls. A new leak was discovered at the crippled Fukushima nuclear plant in Japan today, spewing 57 tons of radioactive waste into a nearby trench. Meanwhile, according to a new report from Greenpeace, sea life off the coast of the melted-down Fukushima reactor contains high levels of radiation. Japanese officials assured the world that the tons and tons of radioactive wastewater that's been dumped in the ocean will dilute enough to not pose a health risk. But this new report from Greenpeace concluded otherwise. Tests on fish, oysters, and seaweed more than 12 miles off the coast contain radiation levels 50 times above the legal limits. I have a bad feeling that this is just the first of a series of permanent consequences resulting from the Fukushima disaster and our world's dependence on the most expensive form of electricity there is, nuclear energy. Crazy alert, the human balloon. A man in New Zealand nearly died in the most unusual of ways. Steve McCormick was at a gas station when he slipped and fell on top of a broken air pressure valve. Let's just say the valve entered McCormick's body through a most unlikely posterior place and immediately shot air at 100 pounds per square inch right into him, inflating his body to twice its normal size in just a matter of minutes. It took 3 days for McCormick to shrink back to normal size. Luckily, there was no permanent damage, and it looks like McCormick could have quite a future on conservative talk radio, since he already meets one of the few requirements. He has a history of being full of hot air. And that's the way it is today, Thursday, May 26th, 2011. I'm Thom Hartmann on the news.